Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome back to the morning meditation where we continue to talk marriage. And we're talking through the principles here of this book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And we left off last time with this thought in mind, that deep inside of many of the hurting couples that we see is an invisible love tank. And it's on empty. It's not being filled, whether it's one spouse or both of them. The tank is just not being filled. They're on empty. And so their marriage is suffering. And so as we kick this off this morning, I want to remind you that God established this institution of marriage way back in the book of Genesis. And Jesus repeats what God said in the New Testament, Mark chapter 10. Jesus says, "For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and cleave to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. So then they are no more twain, but one flesh." And so, as we consider that, think about when you first met your spouse. When you were first falling in love is the phrase we use. The author uses that phrase as well. During that falling in love stage, as a couple, you're generally obsessed with each other. And when you're in that stage of being obsessed with each other, your tank is always full. Your love tank is always to the top. And so that average, they say that average in love experience lasts about 2 years. And so I think back to when I went to Pensacola Christian College, and being a Christian college, there was a lot of rules, and one of those was you couldn't touch the opposite sex. And so there would be couples that were in this stage, falling in love, getting to know each other, obsessed with one another, and they would sit face to face at a table so close it was uncomfortable to watch, and they would just sit there and talk and stare into each other's eyes because they were in this stage, and recognize that this in love experience is an emotional high. And you and I want to pursue a real love. You see, we have to learn to love one another without this euphoria of the in love obsession, because all of your marriage cannot be an in-love obsession. Tiffany and I have been married now 13 years. We went out last night, and we had a little date night. It was nice to go out and eat. And I promise you, we did not sit 2 inches apart across the table. We just did not do that. But we still enjoyed our time. We had a good time together and enjoyed just a little getaway. But the truth is, our most basic emotional need is not to fall in love, but it's to genuinely be loved. It's to be loved by someone who chooses to love me, by someone who sees me as worth loving. And that takes effort, and that takes discipline. That is an attitude that says, I am married to you, and I choose to look out for your interest. I'm going to find ways to express my love for you. And if we can do that, if we can learn how to meet our spouse's deepest emotional need, and then if we can actually do that, so we learn how and what their need is, and then we actually do and work at meeting that need, then we can have a marriage that's going to flourish, it's going to last. And so that's what this study is going to be about. It's going to be about figuring out, what is my spouse's love language, to use the author's words. What is my husband or my wife's love language, and so how can I continually fill that tank so they're always on full? And so let me just, as we close today, give you those 5 love languages, something to think about. We'll break them down next week. Those 5 would be words of affirmation. Maybe this is your love language. You need those words of affirmation, words of appreciation. You need to hear those. Maybe it's quality time. You just want to spend quality time with your spouse, with the TV off, where you can talk, where you can continue to have good conversation, not just about schedule, what are we doing today, but just good quality conversation, quality time. Maybe yours is receiving gifts, and so if your wife or if your husband brings you something, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but they might just be thinking about you and bring something home, and that fills up your love tank. Or maybe it's acts of service, or maybe it's physical touch. But according to our author, there are 5 love languages, and starting next week, we're going to break down those 5 to figure out what is yours, what is your spouse's, and how can we continue to meet that deep emotional need that our spouse has. Well, thanks for tuning in this morning. Look forward to seeing you next week.